The soft snoring echoed through the pristine halls of the Galactic Naval Academy like a broken air filtration system. Cadet Luna Vex had perfected the art of sleeping through Admiral Kane's legendary strategy lectures, her head propped up on one hand, while drool threatened to pool on her desk. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Here was the daughter of humanity's greatest war hero, snoozing to the very classes that had shaped interstellar military doctrine for 3 centuries. "Miss Vex!" Admiral Kane's voice boomed across the lecture hall like a plasma cannon discharge. "Perhaps you'd care to enlighten us about the third battle of Proxima?" Luna's eyes snapped open, revealing startling violet irises that seemed to hold depths of knowledge she'd never bothered to share. She blinked twice, yawned without covering her mouth, and shrugged. "Easy. The Terran fleet got cocky, split their formation, and the Zalari picked them apart like vultures on roadkill. Next question." The Admiral's weathered face turned an interesting shade of crimson. 23 years of teaching military strategy, and this infuriating girl could summarize complex battles in her sleep. Literally. "And how would you have approached it differently?" Kane pressed, his voice dripping with challenge. Luna stretched like a cat waking from a nap, joints popping audibly. "I wouldn't have engaged at all. The Zalari were baiting us. Smart money says you feint retreat, let them overextend, then hit their supply lines. War is not about winning battles. Admiral, it's about making the other guy lose them." The lecture hall fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. Even Cadet Marcus Chun, who'd been taking notes faster than a data processor, stopped mid-sentence. Luna had just casually dismantled a battle plan that had taken the greatest military minds weeks to analyze. "Interesting theory," Kane said slowly. "Care to elaborate?" "Not particularly." Luna leaned back in her chair, already looking drowsy again. "Can we move on? This chair's giving me a cramp." The rest of the class passed in typical fashion. Luna dozed while Kane discussed fleet formations, supply chain logistics, and psychological warfare techniques. Her classmates took copious notes, desperate to absorb every word that might give them an edge in their upcoming final examinations. Luna just breathed softly, occasionally muttering something that sounded suspiciously like tactical corrections in her sleep. After class, Marcus caught up with her in the corridor. "Luna, you realize the finals are next week, right? And Admiral Kane's planning something special for the practical exam." Luna rubbed her eyes and yawned. "Marcus, you worry too much. It's just moving ships around on a holographic display. How hard can it be?" "Hard enough that half our class is already having nervous breakdowns," Marcus replied, gesturing toward their classmate Sarah Kim, who was frantically reviewing battle formations while walking. "The rumor is Kane's designing a scenario based on Siege of Kepler Station. You know, the one where humanity lost 30% of our fleet. That old thing." Luna waved dismissively. "The Terran commanders made 3 critical errors in the first hour alone. Anyone with half a brain could see what went wrong." Marcus stared at her. "Luna, that battle's been analyzed by military historians for decades. There are entire textbooks written about the complexity of the tactical situation." "Yeah, and they're all wrong." Luna stopped at a food dispenser and ordered a chocolate protein bar. The real problem wasn't tactical. It was psychological. Humans fight like humans. Aliens fight like aliens. The moment you try to predict alien behavior using human logic, you've already lost. She bit into her protein bar and continued walking, leaving Marcus to contemplate her words. Luna Vex might sleep through every class, but when she spoke about warfare, there was something almost prophetic in her casual observations. 3 days later, the Academy's emergency klaxons shattered the morning quiet like broken glass. Luna jolted awake in her dormitory bed, violet eyes immediately alert to spite, having been dead asleep moments before. The klaxons meant only one thing: real war, not simulation. The Academy's communication system crackled to life. All cadets report to battle stations immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Luna grabbed her uniform and dressed with surprising efficiency for someone who usually moved like molasses. Outside her window, she could see the orbital defense platforms powering up their massive railgun arrays. In the distance, Emergency lights flashed on dozens of military vessels as they prepared for immediate deployment. The main briefing hall buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of cadets filed in. Admiral Kane stood at the podium, his usual stern demeanor replaced by something closer to grim determination. Behind him, holographic displays showed real-time fleet positions and what appeared to be a massive alien armada approaching the Sol system. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kane began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic dampeners. "As of 2 hours ago, long-range sensors detected an invasion fleet of unknown composition approaching Earth. The fleet consists of approximately 800 vessels of varying sizes, traveling at sublight speeds but maintaining formations we've never encountered before." The hall erupted in whispers and gasps. Luna remained silent, studying the tactical display with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. Kane continued, "What makes this particularly concerning is that these ships don't match any known alien design in our databases. They're not Zalari, not Arctonian, not any of the species we've encountered in the past 2 centuries. This is first contact with a hostile, unknown civilization." Luna's hand shot up. Kane paused, clearly surprised. In 3 years at the Academy, Luna had never volunteered to speak in a briefing. "Yes, Miss Vex." "Admiral, you said they're maintaining formations you've never seen before. Can you be more specific?" Kane manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on the approaching fleet. They're arranged in what appears to be a spiral pattern, with larger vessels at the center and smaller craft forming concentric rings around them. The formation rotates slowly as it moves, but maintains perfect symmetry. Luna studied the display for 30 seconds, her violet eyes tracking the movement patterns. Then she started laughing, not a polite chuckle, but deep, genuine laughter that echoed to the silent hall. "Miss Vex," Kane's voice carried a dangerous edge, "perhaps you'd care to explain what you find amusing about an alien invasion?" Luna wiped tears from her eyes and stood up. "Admiral, with all due respect, that's not an invasion formation. That's a funeral procession." The hall fell dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop in the vacuum of space. "Explain," Kane demanded. Luna walked down to the front of the hall, her usual drowsy demeanor completely gone. She moved with the fluid confidence of someone who'd suddenly found their element. "Look at the pattern," she said, manipulating the holographic controls with surprising familiarity. "The spiral formation isn't tactical. It's ceremonial. The larger ships in the center aren't command vessels. They're tomb ships. The smaller craft aren't escorts. They're mourners." She zoomed in further, highlighting specific vessel configurations. "See these energy signatures? Those aren't weapons charging. That's a preservation field. They're keeping something in stasis. Something important enough to travel across the galaxy to honor." Admiral Kane studied the display, his expression shifting from skepticism to growing realization. "You're suggesting this entire fleet is here for a burial?" "Not just any burial," Luna replied, her voice taking on an almost conversational tone despite the gravity of the situation. "Look at the trajectory. They're not heading for Earth. They're heading for coordinates just outside our solar system, somewhere significant to them, but not threatening to us." She turned to face the assembled cadets and faculty, her violet eyes bright with an intelligence that had been hiding behind years of apparent apathy. "Here's the thing about alien psychology that everyone keeps getting wrong. You can't apply human motivations to non-human actions. We see a massive fleet approaching our system and assume invasion because that's what humans would do. But what if they're not human? What if honor and ritual matter more to them than conquest?" Kane's weathered face showed the first signs of hope since the crisis began. "If you're right, Miss Vex, this could be resolved diplomatically." Luna's expression darkened slightly. "Oh, I'm right about the funeral procession part. But here's where it gets interesting." She manipulated the display again, highlighting a cluster of smaller, faster vessels at the edge of the formation. "These ships, they're not part of the ceremony. They're scouts, and their trajectory suggests they're very interested in mapping our defensive capabilities." The hope that had flickered in Kane's eyes dimmed. "You're saying we're dealing with 2 different groups?" "I'm saying we're dealing with a funeral procession that's being followed by something that definitely isn't here to pay respects." Luna's voice carried a cold certainty that made everyone in the room pay attention. The mourners are peaceful. The shadows trailing behind them? Not so much. She turned back to the tactical display, her fingers dancing over the controls with the skill of someone who'd been born to read strategic situations. Admiral, I need access to our deep space monitoring stations. If I'm right about this, we got maybe 6 hours before the real threat reveals itself. And when it does, everything humanity thinks it knows about space warfare is going to become obsolete. Kane stared at the young woman who'd slept through 3 years of his classes, seeing her clearly for the first time. Miss Vex, are you telling me you've been pretending to be incompetent? Luna's smile was sharp enough to cut through starship hull plating. Admiral, I've been trying to stay awake in classes that teach tactics from wars fought by species that think like humans. But we're about to face an enemy that doesn't think like us at all. And frankly, your textbook strategies aren't going to cut it. She gestured toward the approaching fleet, her casual demeanor belying the intensity in her violet eyes. The good news is, I've been thinking about this problem for 3 years while everyone assumed I was sleeping. The bad news is, we're going to need every advantage we can get, because whoever's following that funeral procession just used mourners as cover to infiltrate our solar system. And that level of strategic thinking suggests we're dealing with an enemy that makes the Zalari look like amateur pirates. The silence in the briefing hall was deafening. Every cadet, every instructor, every member of the Academy staff stared at Luna Vex with a mixture of shock, awe, and growing respect. Admiral Kane straightened his uniform and made a decision that would change the course of human military history. Miss Vex, consider yourself temporarily promoted to strategic consultant. You have full access to our sensor networks, communication systems, and tactical databases. What do you need? Luna's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed almost predatory in the harsh briefing hall lighting. Coffee, Admiral. Lots of coffee. Because I have a feeling we're going to be pulling some very long nights. And when this is over, humanity is going to need to completely rethink how we wage war among the stars. She turned back to the tactical display, her fingers already working on analysis protocols that would have taken trained strategists hours to implement. Oh, and Admiral, you might want to start preparing evacuation plans for the outer colonies. Because if I'm wrong about the mourners being peaceful, we're looking at extinction. And if I'm right about the shadows following them being hostile, we're looking at something far worse than extinction. We're looking at a war against an enemy that's been studying us from the moment they entered our solar system. The klaxons continued to wail as Luna Vex, the cadet who'd slept through every strategy class, began to orchestrate humanity's defense against an enemy that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional military thinking. 4 hours later, the Academy's Strategic Command Center had been transformed into something resembling control chaos. Luna Vex stood at the central holographic display, surrounded by admirals, generals, and senior strategists who hung on her every word like desperate survivors clinging to life rafts. Coffee cups littered every available surface, and the air thrummed with tension thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. The Shadow Fleet just dropped out of formation, Luna announced, her fingers dancing across multiple control interfaces simultaneously. They're moving into attack positions behind the asteroid belt. Clever little psychopaths. Admiral Kane studied the updated tactical display, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack titanium. How many vessels are we talking about, Miss Vex? 237 confirmed hostiles. Luna replied without looking up from her calculations. But here's the fun part. They're not just hiding behind the asteroids for cover. They're using the morning fleet's energy signatures to mask their own power readings. Whoever planned this operation understands human psychology better than most humans do. General Martinez, the Academy's tactical warfare instructor, leaned forward. What do you mean? Luna finally looked up, her violet eyes blazing with an intensity that made seasoned veterans step back involuntarily. Think about it. They knew we'd detect the funeral procession first. They knew we'd focus all our attention on the larger, more obvious threat. While we're analyzing ceremonial formations and debating diplomatic solutions, the real attack force gets into optimal striking position, completely undetected. She manipulated the display, highlighting the Shadow Fleet's positioning with red indicators. This isn't random, people. This is psychological warfare at a level that makes our previous conflicts look like children throwing rocks at each other. Admiral Kane's communication console chimed urgently. He activated the channel, and Commander Sarah Blake's voice filled the command center. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the funeral fleet. It's unusual. Define unusual, Commander, Kane replied, his eyes still fixed on Luna's tactical analysis. The signal is coming from one of the tomb ships, sir. It's addressed specifically to someone named Luna Vex. Every person in the command center turned to stare at Luna, who had gone perfectly still. For the first time since the crisis began, she looked genuinely surprised. Put it through, she said quietly. The holographic display shifted to show a communication interface. When the signal resolved, it revealed something that defied every expectation about alien contact. The being on screen appeared almost human, except for skin that shimmered like liquid silver and eyes that held the depth of ancient starlight. Luna Vex, the being spoke in perfect, unaccented English, daughter of Captain Maria Vex, granddaughter of Admiral Jonathan Vex. We have traveled far to honor your bloodline. Luna's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. You know my family? The silver being nodded slowly. Your grandmother fought alongside my people during the War of the Burning Nebula. She saved 17 of our worlds from extinction. We have come to inter her remains in the sacred void she chose as her final resting place. The command center erupted in confused whispers. Admiral Kane held up a hand for silence. Miss Vex, your grandmother died in battle 20 years ago. Her body was never recovered. The silver being's expression shifted to something resembling gentle correction. Admiral Kane, with respect, her body was recovered. By us. We have preserved her in stasis for 2 decades, waiting for the proper time to honor her sacrifice according to both human and Vethran customs. Luna's voice cracked slightly. Your Vethran? The lost civilization from the Outer Rim? Not lost, child. Hidden. Your grandmother's actions during the war saved not only our worlds, but our entire species. We have spent 20 years preparing the ceremony, and 20 more years watching over your family line to ensure her legacy would be understood. The implications hit Luna like a physical blow. Her grandmother, the legendary Admiral Vex, had been humanity's greatest military mind. The hero whose strategic brilliance had ended 3 major wars and established the foundations of interstellar peace. But if you're here to honor my grandmother, Luna said slowly, then who are the ships hiding behind the asteroid belt? The Vethran silver features darkened with something approaching fury. The Devourers. They follow funeral processions, seeking to desecrate the honored dead and consume the mourners. They have pursued us across half the galaxy. Luna's hands flew back to the tactical controls, her mind racing through new calculations. How many more ships do they have? What you see is merely their advanced force, the Vethran replied grimly. Their main fleet numbers in the thousands. They use funeral processions as bait, knowing that honorable species will not fire upon mourners. When defenders hesitate, the Devourers strike. The command center fell silent, except for the hum of processing computers and the distant sound of Luna's furious typing. She was running battle simulations at a speed that seemed superhuman, her violet eyes tracking dozens of variables simultaneously. Admiral Kane, she said without looking up, I need immediate communication with all fleet commanders in the Sol system, and I need authorization to issue tactical orders under emergency protocols. Kane hesitated. Luna was still technically a cadet, despite her temporary promotion, but the alternative was facing an unknown enemy with conventional tactics that had already proven inadequate. Granted, he said firmly, all units. This is Admiral Kane. Cadet Luna Vex is now acting as strategic command coordinator. All fleet commanders will follow her tactical directives without question. Luna's smile was sharp enough to shatter starship armor. Excellent. Now, let's give these Devourers a lesson in human psychology. She activated the system-wide communication network, her voice carrying across dozens of ships and stations with crystal clarity. All units. This is strategic command. We are facing an enemy that uses honor and ceremony as weapons against us. They expect us to hesitate, to debate, to follow conventional engagement protocols. Today, we're going to prove that humans are far more dangerous when we stop acting like humans. She brought up a new tactical display showing the entire solar system. The Devourers have made 3 critical errors. First, they assumed our defensive formations would be predictable. Second, they believed their psychological warfare would paralyze our decision-making process. Third, and most importantly, they don't understand what happens when you threaten a human's family. Luna's fingers moved across the controls like a concert pianist performing a masterpiece of destruction. Fleet Alpha, you're going to perform what appears to be a full retreat toward Mars. Make it look desperate, panicked, completely disorganized. Let them think they've broken our spirits. Admiral Thompson's voice crackled through the communications array. Miss Vex, Fleet Alpha represents 60% of our defensive capability. If we retreat... Admiral Thompson, Luna interrupted, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her 19 years. Trust me. Fleet Beta, I need you to begin evacuation protocols for the outer stations. Make it obvious, make it noisy, and make sure the Devourers see every panicked escape pod. You want us to look like we're running away? Captain Morris sounded incredulous. I want you to look like humans who realize they're overmatched and are desperately trying to save themselves, Luna replied. Because that's exactly what the Devourers expect to see. They've studied human psychology, but they've only studied our fear responses. They don't understand our anger responses. She turned to Admiral Kane, her violet eyes bright with predatory anticipation. Admiral, how many unmarked stealth drones do we have in the outer system? Kane consulted his tactical database. Approximately 400, positioned throughout the asteroid belt for mining survey operations. Perfect. And how many of those drones could be retrofitted with plasma charges powerful enough to destabilize asteroid cores? Understanding dawned in Kane's eyes. All of them, given about 2 hours of remote programming. Luna's smile widened. Excellent. Here's what we're going to do. The Devourers are hiding behind asteroids, using them as cover while they position for their attack. They think they're being clever, staying hidden until our retreating fleets are completely out of position. She manipulated the display, showing the Devourer positions in relation to the larger asteroids. But asteroids are just rocks floating in space, and rocks have a nasty tendency to explode when you apply the right pressure in the right places. Admiral Kane stared at the tactical projection, his expression shifting from confusion to amazement. You want to use the asteroids as weapons? I want to turn their cover into their coffins, Luna replied coldly. While our fleets perform their desperate retreat, our stealth drones will be positioning themselves at strategic points throughout the asteroid belt. When the Devourers emerge from hiding to pursue our fleeing ships, we detonate charges that will turn every asteroid in the belt into high-velocity projectiles. General Martinez whistled softly. That's brilliant and completely insane. Insane is a matter of perspective, Luna said. From the Devourer's perspective, they're about to face an enemy that just weaponized an entire asteroid belt. From our perspective, we're about to show an alien species why humans are the most dangerous predators in the galaxy when you threaten our families. She activated the communication array again, her voice carrying to every human ship and station in the solar system. All units, execute Operation Grandmother's Revenge. Repeat, execute Operation Grandmother's Revenge. Time to show these Devourers what happens when you crash a human funeral. The next 90 minutes passed in a blur of coordinated chaos. Human fleets performed seemingly panicked retreats, while stealth drones moved into position with surgical precision. The Devourers, convinced they were witnessing the collapse of human resistance, began moving out from behind their asteroid cover. Luna stood at the command center, surrounded by displays showing real-time positions of hundreds of vessels, thousands of drones, and millions of tons of space debris that was about to become the most devastating weapon system in human history. Stealth drones report optimal positioning. Came the report from Fleet Operations. Devourer advanced forces are pursuing Fleet Alpha as predicted, reported communications. All evacuation protocols are proceeding on schedule, added Logistics Command. Luna watched the tactical display, like a chess master contemplating the perfect endgame. The Devourers had taken the bait completely. emerging from cover in pursuit of what they believed were fleeing human vessels. All units, Luna's voice carried across space with deadly calm. Prepare for simultaneous detonation on my mark. Remember, we're not just fighting for our lives today. We're fighting for the honor of every human who ever stood between evil and the innocent. She paused, watching as the last Devourer ships moved into optimal range. For Admiral Maria Vex, who saved 17 worlds and taught her granddaughter that sometimes the best strategy is the one your enemy never sees coming. Her finger hovered over the detonation control. Execute. The asteroid belt erupted in a chain reaction of explosions that turned space itself into a weapon. Massive rocks became projectiles, moving at thousands of kilometers per hour. The Devourers, caught completely in the open, found themselves facing a debris field that made their advanced shields and armor completely useless. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Shadow Fleet was eliminated by an attack they never saw coming, using weapons they never expected, deployed by an enemy they had completely underestimated. Luna Vex, the cadet who had slept through every strategy class, had just orchestrated the most devastating military victory in human history. As the last Devourer's ship went dark, the silver-skinned Vethran reappeared on the communication display. "Luna Vex," he said with deep respect, "your grandmother would be proud. You fight with her wisdom and your own unique brilliance. The ceremony can now proceed in peace." Luna nodded, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "Thank you for bringing her home." Admiral Kane placed a hand on her shoulder. "Miss Vex, I believe we need to have a very serious discussion about your future at this academy." Luna yawned, her famous drowsiness returning now that the immediate crisis had passed. "Can it wait, Admiral? All that thinking made me tired. I could really use a nap." As the command center erupted in laughter and cheers, Luna Vex settled into the nearest chair and promptly fell asleep, dreaming of her grandmother's proud smile and the sound of asteroids exploding like fireworks across the star-filled void.